Hello crafty friends, would you like to literally level up your card making? If you would, then stick around, because in this video I'm going to show you how to use texture paste techniques to create the kind of depth, dimension and visual interest that will make your handmade cards really stand out from the crowd. I have here all my texture pastes. I've got Liquitex light modelling paste, the Crafters Workshop clear modelling paste, Ranger Texture Paste Transparent Gloss, Decofoil Transfer Gel Duo, Tim Holtz Distress Texture Paste Translucent, and Nouveau Embellishment Mousse in Powder Blue. These are just texture pastes that I've bought over the years for specific purposes. This one is just white and slightly translucent, but it's a really good base for all sorts of things. This Nouveau Embellishment Mousse I picked up at a charity shop, and it's a lovely pale blue metallic. I bought these two specifically because I wanted some clear texture paste that I could colour with different things. Honestly, I can't tell the difference between this and this. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think they're basically the same thing. They're transparent and they're glossy. I did buy this one because, again, I wanted something clear, but it doesn't dry completely clear. It comes out of the tub greyish and it pretty much stays that colour, but you can colour it. And this one I bought specifically for using with foil. Equipment wise, you need your paste, you need something to take it out the tub with and spread it with. I've got this palette knife that I like to use for small areas, and I've got this cake icing scraper thingy that I like to use for larger areas. You can get things like this specifically for texture paste, but with a lot of craft supplies and tools. They're more expensive than the equivalent that you can buy down the kitchen aisle in the supermarket. And you're going to need something to put your texture paste on. So for technique number one, we're going to look at stenciling. I've got a grip mat here, and I like to use these because it keeps the card still and it keeps the stencil still. And this is just really basic texture pasting. I'm going to use the embellishment mousse. I'm nearly at the bottom of the pot now, so it gives me a nice excuse to go back to the crafty charity shop and see if they've got any more. I like to give my texture paste a good massage when it comes out of the pot. It sort of loosens it up a bit and it makes it easier to spread. So if you're going to use a small palette knife like this, you can load it up and then just gently, you don't have to press hard, because if you press hard, you run the risk of the paste splurging underneath your stencil. Oh my goodness, those pigeons are going off on one this morning. If you're going to use a large spreader, you could use a gift card, or, as I say, one of these icing thingamajigs. You can put your texture paste at one end of your stencil and then gently, again, scrape it down. And I find if I don't fill the entire area that I want to fill, I can just gently go over it from different directions until I get the effect I want. It really does depend on what you're looking for. So sometimes you want to fill all the holes all the way, and other times you don't. But I think gentleness is really important at this stage. If you go a bit heavy-handed, again, you run the risk of splurging underneath your stencil. So there we go, I think that's pretty good. Got some lovely metallic pale blue dimension. That's probably going to take an hour or so to dry, so I'm going to set that aside. It's really important to clean everything straight away when you use texture paste, because if it dries on your stencils or your equipment, then it's going to be quite hard to remove and you're going to change the shape of the holes in your stencil. I just go over it quickly with a baby wipe, but you can have a bowl of warm soapy water next to you that you can just toss your stencils and other bits and bobs in. I do have a playlist of videos all about how to use stencils, so if you want more stenciling and texture paste or just general stenciling ideas, then check that out. But you don't have to use your texture pastes as dimensional elements. Just put some on this microfiber cloth here. and I can blend those through the stencil. You could get some onto a sponge dauber and blend it on that way. You could use your fingers even. But again, make sure you put that straight into water so that you can wash that texture paste out and not waste a blending sponge. So now we've got a softer, flatter stenciled pattern, but it's still that metallic powder blue. While I've got my sponge loaded up with texture paste on my finger by the looks of things, I'm going to blend it onto this linen textured white card that I'm using today, and I can create some metallic coloured card now. So you can blend some texture pastes onto cardstock, so that's got a nice metallic sheen, and I'm not sure how well this is going to show up because it's such a light colour, but before that texture paste dries you can pop a stencil over the top and go over it with a damp baby white, and then you get a lifting effect. So that's added quite a bit of water to that. I've got some areas where I've lifted off the paste and gone back to white cardstock, and that's going to give me a nice subtle look. I think if you're using a stronger colour you'll obviously see the effect more. I'll take a photo of this and show you a close-up because I'm not sure how well that's going to come across on video. So you've seen me add paste onto card. You can also add it onto other surfaces. I've got some vellum here. This may make the vellum curl a little bit because it's a wet medium, but as it dries out it should flatten. So I'm only going to apply a little bit sort of round the middle. This would make a nice background piece. So that's texture paste on vellum. I've got some acetate here, and the nice thing about using see-through materials is you can see through to the texture paste from either side. So that's texture paste on the front, and there it is from the back. You could add texture paste to coloured cardstock, you could add it to patterned paper. The world's your oyster really when it comes to surfaces. You don't just have to use texture paste on its own. You can mix it with other things. So this is the translucent texture paste that I've got here. So although it's white, it will dry clear. And now I've got some biodegradable copper colour glitter. So I can sprinkle that in and give it a good mix. And now I've made my own glitter paste. And now I can just add this onto a bit of card or acetate or vellum or whatever I fancy. I do have a video in which I use this stuff, clear PVA glue, to make my own DIY glitter paste. So I will leave a link to that below if you'd like to watch that. This is definitely cheaper than the texture pastes. Again, I shall take a photo of that when it's dry so that you can see what it looks like when the paste itself has gone clear. I'm going to add the light modelling paste through this stencil, and while the texture paste is still wet I'm going to sprinkle over this dappled coral embossing powder from Well. You can cover the whole thing or you can just do little sprinkles here and there. I think I'll cover the whole thing, and you can either heat that while the texture paste is still wet. If you do, it'll bubble up and give you a really interesting texture, or you can leave the texture paste to set and then heat it, in which case it won't bubble up, so you'll get nice flat heat embossed patterns. So I'm going to leave that until it's set and heat it and then take a photo for you. Okay, it's been a few hours and I have heated the embossing powder with my heat tool, and now I've got some extra dimensional heat embossing. So you've got the dimension from the embossing powder itself on top of the dimension from the paste. Right, we're going to go back to the Nouveau embellishment mousse, and I'm going to use it like a gilding wax. So gilding waxes you can blend on with your finger or a sponge, and they just highlight the raised edges of things. So I've got this already loaded up, so I may as well use it. And I can just go over this and gild basically the top of the embossed image. You can use your finger, just get a layer on your finger and then do that. Not all pastes will work this way, but some will. So I know it's pale, but hopefully you can pick up the sheen now. I'm going to spread that out on my mat, and I'm going to pick it up with my brayer, give it a good coating, and I'm going to run it over the background of this embossing folder. Again, don't forget to clean up straight away. I'll pop my card in and run it through my die cutting machine, and now I've got that powder blue sheen on the background and the raised areas are still white. And while I've got that loaded up, I can use that to add my sheen to some cardstock. I can brayer it on straight like that. I can create abstract patterns, and now I've got that sheen on there. You can also brayer it onto a gel plate, then take a bit of card and pick it up, doing all your different gel plate techniques with it. This is just to show you that it can be used on a gel plate. So again, just a very subtle sheen. Obviously the results will be completely different depending on what texture paste you use, so experiment with what you have. If you have bold, bright texture paste colours, then that will obviously give you much more profound effects. Now with some texture pastes, you can spread it quite thickly onto an embossing folder and leave it to dry, and then you can peel it off and you'll get an embossed look. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave this. Just want to make sure it's thick enough so that it doesn't completely fall apart when I peel it off. So this texture paste in my embossing folder has gone dry, but I can't peel it out, it's just coming out in little bits. So Nouveau embellishment mousse doesn't really work with this technique. What I'm going to do is take some of my clear PVA glue, which we know is flexible, and I'm going to mix it with some pigment powders. You could add some glitter as well. And I've left my other palette knife out in the kitchen after I gave it a good wash. So I'm just going to use this one. Mix that all together and then pop it on this embossing folder in an artistic blob. So I decided to leave this one overnight to let that glue really dry, and I have been able to peel it off really easily. And now I've got a really interesting, glossy, textural piece of flexible texture paste that I can stick to the front of a card. I could probably even die cut out of it. I've not tried. Why don't we try that? So I'm going to sandwich it between two bits of paper just because it feels quite delicate and I don't want to damage it. And there you go. I have been able to die cut it. It's sort of adhered itself to the bit of paper, but I can peel it off. So now I could use either side of that. The side that was in contact with the embossing folder is slightly less glossy than the other side, but I think that's really lovely. I did also try it with the translucent texture paste, the Tim Holtz one. I mixed it with some peach colour pigment powder and put it on this 3D embossing folder, and again I left it overnight, and that peels off beautifully, and we've got a lovely 3D pattern there which you can see from both sides. Again, the side that was in contact with the embossing folder has lost its gloss, but I still like that a lot. You could use that side with the glossy, more flat texture, or you could use that side. And I'm pretty sure I could die cut this. You can certainly scissor cut it. Yep, you can definitely die cut that. So note to self, don't use the Nouveau embellishment mousse. Try clear PVA or a more glossy texture paste. Now some texture pastes, like this embellishment mousse, you can turn into paints. They are water soluble. So I've got a little bit on my mat. I'm going to add some water to it, take a paintbrush, mix it around to make a paint, and then I can add my paint. Obviously the water to paste ratio will affect how strong the colour is. And because you've turned this into a paint, you can also use it with a smusher to smush on some colour, and you can also spatter with it. So I do like these Nouveau embellishment mousses. I've had quite a few over the years, and I always finish the pots because there's so many different ways you can use them. Right, I'm going to use some of the light white modelling paste here, and I've put some evergreen bough distress oxide on my mat because you can use inks, paints, re-inkers, pigment powders to colour your own texture paste. Obviously the ratio of paste to ink or whatever colour you're using will affect how strong that colour is. And now I'm going to put it on here with a palette knife. You could leave it like that and that looks really effective, makes a really nice landing spot for a cluster of embellishments. But you could smooth it out. You can also press things into it. I've got a rubber stamp here, but you can use any kind of stamp. You just place it on top. Try not to wiggle it, and just give it a good press down. And then peel it up, and you've got some really lovely texture in that splodge of green texture paste. Again, clean your stamps, and that impression will stay in that while it sets and dries. There are loads of different things that you could press into your texture paste. You could use embossing folders, you could just make marks with your fingers, you could look for found items around your house and just press them into the texture paste, coloured or uncoloured, and see what results you can create. So if you're into foiling, you can use this Deco Foil Transfer Gel Duo, and it says on the packet that you can foil using it with and without heat. I do find that you get better results with heat, but it does work without heating it up. What I'm going to do is just spread it down my stencil like that, set it aside to dry. It does take a couple of hours, and then I will run it through my laminator with some foil and show you the results. I do have a playlist of foiling videos with lots of different ways to foil in, so check that out if you're interested. So it's been a couple of hours and my Deco Foil Transfer Gel Duo has dried, and it is tacky. I've got a carrier sheet here which is just baking parchment, and I'm going to put some Wow Fab Foil pretty side up on top of my card with the dried texture paste on. Then I can close this, and when my laminator ready light goes steady, I can pass it through my laminator. Now I'm going to give that a moment to cool, and then I'll peel the foil off. And now we've got some lovely foiled textural dimensional spots. I do like to use the transparent or translucent glossy texture pastes to create some tone on tone dimension. So again, this is one that comes out of the jar white, but once it's dry it's completely clear. So I should have some nice clear glossy circles on that are slightly darker than the background, so they show up quite well. For completeness sake, I'll just show you this Crafters Workshop clear modelling paste. Give that a bit of a massage as well because it's quite gloopy. Sometimes you'll buy a product and it just doesn't do what you expect it to do, but don't throw it away. Have a think about different ways of using it. So this doesn't dry completely clear like I expected it to, but I can get some nice results using it. And here's the tone on tone with transparent texture paste card. So that's quite nice. I might have a look and see if there's such a thing as transparent matte texture paste, just because I'd be interested in creating a tone on tone look but without the gloss as well. This is the Crafter's Companion Clear Modelling Paste, and as you can see it is matte, but it's not transparent or clear like this is. It came out of the tub grey and it's still kind of grey on top. You could call it tone on tone, but it's not quite the same look, but it might be good for some situations. So this is the transparent or the translucent texture paste. I'm also going to take some of the white texture paste, and to both I'm going to add some peacock coloured pigment powder from Indigo Blue. So this, it has watercolour pigment in it and mica, so it's very shiny and shimmery. So we'll start with the white texture paste, and I'll put it at the top of the card. And now for the translucent, I'll put this at the bottom of the card. I put roughly the same amount of pigment in both, and hopefully once it's dry you'll be able to see the different effect you get when you use a translucent versus an opaque texture paste with a shimmery medium like pigment powder. And here we are a couple of hours later. The texture paste is all dried. This was with the white and this was with the transparent. So you can see that you still get that shimmer and shine from the mica with the transparent texture paste, but with the white texture paste you lose almost all of the shimmer and shine, but you still get the colour. So you need to choose the paste that's going to give you the look that you're after. So for this technique I'm going to use some Squeeze Lemonade Distress Oxide to colour my texture paste. And I'm going to start with some light modelling paste. So this is white, so I'll get a nice pastel yellow with this. I'm going to put this through a star stencil on some non-stick craft mat. This is actually baking sheet from Poundland. You could try this on a silicone mat, something that the texture paste is not going to permanently stick to. In fact, it might be better on a silicone mat because this is a little bit wrinkly, this. I'm just trying to think if I've got anything silicone other than, ooh, I know, hang on. So I'll leave that like that to dry. And I've got a silicone stamp here, which is a bit firmer, and will hopefully allow me to get some stars. And the idea with this is that once these have dried, I should be able to peel them off and use them as embellishments. They're quite thin, so this may not work. I do want to try it with some transparent texture paste. So this would in theory give me some translucent yellow embellishments. So I'll do it on here and on the craft mat as well. Right, we'll let that dry and see how they turn out. It's not been that long, but as it's a really hot, warm day, this texture paste has dried quite quickly, and I can actually peel my texture paste stars off of my craft mat. They're very thin and very flexible, but I could glue those down to another piece of card. So this is with the white texture paste. I think the easiest thing is to kind of roll the craft mat and it's easy then to peel off the little shapes. So even the teeny tiny little stars are coming off perfectly well. This is with the transparent texture paste, and I think the problem is it's really flexible, and so peeling it off you kind of stretch it and tear it. So it hasn't worked particularly well. Even if you kind of roll it, the stars just roll with it. So I'm thinking not with the transparent texture paste, or not this particular transparent texture paste. So I put this on the back of the stamp, the solid piece. That's the leafy image side. This is the back of the stamp. They're not really peeling off well at all. So the back of a silicone stamp, probably not the right surface. If you've got a silicone mat and some paste, give it a go and let me know how you get on, because I'd be interested to see if they do peel off, say on a silicone mat. I'm going to have some fun later peeling all of this off. So I can put some little dots of glue on a bit of card and then pick up my stars. I might need to use tweezers on my fingers. I don't think my pickers, so I was going to pick up the little ones, but it's not going to let go. This is all trial and error. So there you have a nice little arrangement of texture-based stars that were made on a craft sheet, peeled off and arranged. So it's been a few more hours and I've come back to the transparent texture paste stars. And I can actually, if I'm careful, peel them off the craft mat, just using the tip of my palette knife. So you can use transparent texture paste to create peel-offable embellishments. Now these are sticking to this vellum quite happily without any extra adhesive. I'll see what happens when I put them on card. I think they are relatively delicate, but they're definitely handleable, peelable and stickable. So they're actually sticking to the cardstock really well. I don't know how permanent that is, but you might not need to add any extra adhesive to these transparent texture paste little embellishments. Definitely something to explore further. Right, we're on to our last idea for today, and that is to use transparent texture paste to create some stained glass window effects. So I've got a frame die cut here, and I'm going to stick it on this piece of pattern paper. It's just a nice rainbow. So I've used my sponge dauber to add glue to the back, and I've got a second one that I'm going to place directly over the top of that one. I'm just trying to create a little bit of depth. I like to use liquid glue for this kind of thing because it does give me the ability to wiggle my die cuts into place. And if you want deeper wells in your stained glass window, you can add more layers. So I'm just adding enough texture paste to fill all the little holes and to get a nice smooth surface. That looks pretty good. We're almost there. You can do this with any die cut that's got holes in it. It doesn't have to be a frame or window-like. But now I've got my top die cut and I can put that over the top. And because it's got sticky texture paste, it should act like a glue. You could wait till the texture paste is dry. In fact, it's probably wise to do that. You can scrape up any excess, pop it back in the pot. In fact, you know what? I'm going to add some more. So this is 3 die cuts deep. And then I will put a nice clean fresh die cut on the top once all this texture paste has dried. And once the texture paste has dried, you can trim off the excess paper. It's taken a while, but this has dried and gone clear now. And now I can cut out my frame from the background, and I can add glue to the back of my top frame and pop it on top. I think it goes the other way. And now I've got a nice, clean, neat, tidy stained glass window. You can achieve a similar effect with embossing powder, with clear embossing powder, and that is definitely quicker. Using transparent texture paste is definitely an option for creating a stained glass look. And there you go, a whole bunch of ways to use texture pastes. All of these will be going in my box of backgrounds and bits, so you will definitely see them being used on cards in future videos. If you'd like to see that, then do subscribe to my channel and ring the notification bell. And if you've enjoyed today's video, please consider leaving a thumbs up and let me know what texture paste ideas you have, or which of today's ideas you're maybe going to try. Right, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you very soon. Bye for now.